And I have to say, but listen, this other guy who's taking care of himself, he might actually get a promotion ahead of you. He might move ahead of you this time. He might even move ahead of you next time. But guess what? Eventually, people are going to look at that guy. They're going to characterize him for what he is, which is someone that's taking care of himself, doesn't care about anyone else, and that is going to undermine his future.
One thing that I had heard that I thought was kind of interesting at a almost a biological level was a description of Bootcamp, which was that Bootcamp was a recapitulation of human development for adults that needed to be retrained as if they had always been meant to be soldiers. So that the idea being that you have a civilian set of instructions in your brain and you have to more or less blow it away to accept all of these differences, that there really is a chain of command and it's not flexible in the way that your regular life might be flexible, or that you think that you can't do something that is within your physical capacity to do it, but requires a lot of effort for you to get to that level. And that in essence, what Bootcamp was it was a second childhood that was imposed to make you safe to be a soldier, to be in harm's way. Whereas if you took your regular self onto a battlefield, your instincts would be completely counter to what would be safe for not only you, but for others who are attached to you. Do you buy that Bootcamp is effectively another version of childhood that is overlaid over the previous one?
I don't know if I'd call it another version of childhood, but I can tell you what, the military boot camps do an incredible job of taking normal human beings from every walk of life and turning them into someone that is, in many cases, now the military is not perfect by any stretch of the imagination, but if you take a kid like me, we'll use me as an example. You take a kid like me that was a marginal student, a marginal athlete. I was very rebellious. I was getting in trouble a lot. And you put me into boot camp and say, okay, you have a blank slate. None of your past matters. We don't care where you're from. We don't care what your parents did. We don't care about any of that. We don't care about your history, your past at all. What we care about, what you're going to do now. And if you do these things, you're going to move in the direction you want to move into. And here's what you're going to do. You know what you do in boot camp? You fold your underwear a certain way. You walk a certain way. You eat a certain way. And that's what you do. And if you do what they tell you to do, you can move forward and you can advance and things work out well. Now, what the thing that you got to remember is boot camp is a minuscule fraction of what your career in the military is.
Right.
So for instance, obedience to orders, right? That's something that you get drilled to do in boot camp. In fact, the purpose of military drill, you see the guys marching around with rifles on their arms and they're all coordinated doing synchronized movements.
Right.
That's called close order drill. And they used to do it because when you were in battle in ranks in the Revolutionary War period, of course, we didn't fight this way in America. That's why we won. But the British military, close order drill. Hey, you're going to draw your weapon at the same time. You're going to load your weapon at the same time. You're going to fire your weapon at the same time. And you're going to follow these orders when they come out directly. That's what it was originally for.
Right.
But we still do close order drill in boot camp. And the reason that they do it is so that you learn immediate obedience to orders. That's why you do it. Now, what you find out after boot camp, and what I tell people all the time, is the last thing I want as a commander is people that are just going to obey my orders without questioning them. I want to be surrounded with people that question what I'm saying, that give me pushback when something doesn't make sense. And the last thing I want is somebody that's just going to blindly obey my orders. So boot camp is like childhood, I guess, but it's really only like infancy. It really just teaches you, gets you potty trained. And then once you get into the military, that's where you actually learn to maneuver, how to lead, how to interact with other people. You learn how to flex up and down the chain of command. Like you talked about the inflexibility of the chain of command. That's actually, the further you get in the military, the more flexibility you see in the chain of command. So,
well, in part, wouldn't that be because the people who rise to positions of power cannot get there by doing it highly egoically, that they have to actually recognize that the guy at the bottom might have the best information? Yes. And that it's really because we refuse to promote people who are crazily egoic that we have that kind of flexibility?
Well, that is an ideal outlook. And certainly that would be a nice thing, but no, there's people in a like I said, in an ideal situation, sure, people are getting promoted because they're the ones that are open-minded. There's the ones that put their ego aside. But I have to explain this to people all the time, that because I always tell people, hey, you need to keep your ego in check. And I have to explain to people, yeah, sometimes that person that is concerned about themselves and they're taking care of themselves, while I'm telling you, Eric, hey, don't worry about yourself, take care of the team, take care of the mission, and things will be okay. And I have to say, but listen, this other guy who's taking care of himself, he might actually get a promotion ahead of you. He might move ahead of you this time. He might even move ahead of you next time. But guess what? Eventually people are going to look at that guy. They're going to characterize him for what he is, which is someone that's taking care of himself, doesn't care about anyone else, and that is going to undermine his future. So in the long run,
right,
you'll advance because you took care of the team, you took care of the mission. Maybe in the short term, you might advance because you took care of yourself, but that's not a long-term solution. So ideally, yes, people that put their ego in check, those are the people that get promoted. Unfortunately, it doesn't always work that way. Sometimes some people are egomaniacs and they step on people's backs and they make it to the top. That absolutely happens.
Do you find that there's I'm always suspicious of the idea of really sidelining the ego. That the ego is, in some sense, this receptacle for our life needs a protagonist somehow, and the ego provides that sense that it is about us because we have one set of eyes, and that's how we tour the world. Do you find that the people that you respect the most, keeping their ego in check, as you say it, are people who are really not highly egoic, or are they people who have their ego involved in like a Mexican standoff with other parts of their personality so that there's a tension and a dynamism to it?
Certainly there's something that I call the dichotomy of leadership, which are these opposing forces that are pulling you in opposite directions all the time. And yes, ego is absolutely one of those things, because if I truly had no ego, well, then I wouldn't care what my performance was. I wouldn't care about anything, right? I would just be happy to be sitting watching television and eating Cheetos. That's what a total lack of ego could do to me. The other extreme is, hey, I'm going to step on everyone's back in order to rise to the top, and I don't care whoever gets in my way, I'm going to take them down. Where do we want to be? We want to be in a balanced place where we're confident, but we're not cocky. I went and spoke with some inner city kids here in LA. And anyway, whenever I speak to people, one of the topics that I talk to them about is, hey, you've got to stay humble, because normally I'm talking to people that are CEOs of companies or, people that are in positions of power. And so I have to constantly remind them to keep their ego in check. And that originated in the fact that I was training young SEAL leaders, and young SEAL leaders, they're front runners, they're overachievers, they got a strong ego, so they have to be told, hey, you got to keep that thing in check. You got to make sure you're listening to other people. You got to hear other people's ideas. You got to make sure that you're taking care of your team ahead of yourself. They need to hear that. I went and spoke with these inner city kids, and it was an interesting group of inner city kids because they weren't just underprivileged. They were underprivileged, but they had done some kind of test so that they were smart kids. And I was going to talk about the normal topics that I speak on, and one of them is humility. And I went in this room and I immediately realized I wasn't going to talk about humility at all, because every one of these kids in this room was beat down.
That wasn't the message they needed.
Their heads were hung low.
Right.
They wouldn't look me in the eyes. So what they needed to hear is, hey, be confident. You have capability. You can do this. So there's a group of people whose ego was crushed too far, and they needed to have confidence built up. So again, this is another one of those classic dichotomies that needs to be balanced. You need to have an ego, but at the same time, you have to be humble enough to listen to other people, and you can't let your ego get out of control.